Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear.
Let us join in a spirit of meditation, reflection, or prayer as we deepen into our service and share our opening words for this morning, which are from Tennessee Williams. The world can be violent and mercurial. It can have its own way with you sometimes. We are saved by love, love for each other, and the love that we pour into the art we feel compelled to share, being a parent, a writer, being a painter, being a friend. Sometimes it's like we live in a burning building, and what we must save from it all the time is love. Indeed, life can be tumultuous, unpredictable, and sometimes harsh. But amidst the chaos, it is our capacity for love, whether expressed through relationships, creativity, or compassion, that sustains us. Let us continue to build and share love, even in a world that often feels like a burning edifice. We join with Unitarian Universalists all over the world now in lighting our chalice. Would Liz Anderson please come up and light the chalice? The chalice is a symbol of the spark of life in each of us. If you are on Zoom and have your chalice with you, I invite you to turn on your video to share while you light them. We are in good company. Our chalice lighting words are "Persist in Faith" by Pat Irby Lichty. We face a challenge to democracy, a challenge that calls us to hope in moments of despair, a challenge that asks us to persist in the faith that we can and we must make a difference. May our flaming chalice recommit us to truth in our words and our actions, that we may live as we believe people should live. And now I am very happy to introduce this morning our speaker, April Fairfield. April grew up on her grandparents' farm outside of Jamestown, where they raised spring wheat and Hereford cattle, and where her grandfather taught her to love, respect, and protect the land. A University of Jamestown graduate in history and political science, she used her degree to pursue a career in politics and public policy. Devoting her career solely to the nonprofit and public sector, April was awarded a prestigious Bush Foundation Fellowship to analyze North Dakota budget priorities and studied nonprofit leadership at Duke University. She served rural Jamestown area as a state representative and a state senator for 10 years, after which she voluntarily retired from office. At the time of her election, she was the youngest woman elected to the Senate in North Dakota. And when she had her daughter, she became the first legislator ever to have a baby while serving. She also was a policy director for the North Dakota Farmers Union. She was chair of the North Dakota Progressive Coalition and the Dakota Resource Council, and she has been a confidant and friend and colleague in the struggle for what's good in North Dakota. Currently, she is the executive director of the North Dakota Kennedy Center and lives in Bismarck with her husband, Steve. And we welcome both of you here today. Please help me welcome April Fairfield.
He asked me to visit with you about democracy, justice, and resiliency in troubling times. I think troubling times being the operative word there. And I've often spoken about democracy and justice. It is, in my belief, what illuminates our path forward. And as a community, state, and nation, that's what drives us. But resiliency, that refusal to succumb to despair, to embrace adversity and see it as an opportunity for growth and transformation. That one can be a little stickier, and it's been a little tricky for me lately. And I think that maybe some of you have been feeling a little less resilient lately, and maybe some of you have been having a little more difficulty with resilience than you have perhaps in the past. I'm seeing just a little bit of like, yeah, perhaps resiliency is a little challenge for you right now too. But I just want to say right now, have you ever met anyone more resilient than Don Morrison? I was thinking about it today, and I thought, his name is Don R. Morrison. Is that what the R stands for? Is it resiliency? Is that resilient Don, resilient Morrison? I've wondered for years if that's what the R is for. Anyway, to be honest, I have not been feeling very resilient. Many of you haven't either. And Wednesday, I was here for the Let's Talk series. Have any of you been able to come to the Let's Talk series here at the UU? If you haven't been, make it a point to come. It is wonderful, thoughtful. People are very open. And they're like many conversations I've had recently. People talk about how they're feeling exhausted and frustrated and unwilling to expose themselves to any more conflict. It's just, it feels so, like there's so much conflict, there's so much negativity around us, even within our own families and within our friend groups. They're feeling a lot of negativity. So it's kind of easy to be feeling disillusioned right now. And it feels maybe a little bit like something's a bit off, right? Like there's a bad vibe going on. Not just about personal things, but about the really big things. People are overwhelmed by it. The issues are so big. I mean, politics, the environment, the Middle East, Ukraine, it's enough to just have you shut down. I mean, just last night, I got this text and it said, "Are we at war?" And I turned on the news, and of course, Iran was, attacking Israel. What got me about it is not that, oh, Iran is attacking Israel, but my thought was, of course they are, because it's just another day, and it's just so much. There's just so much. So I don't know if it's that there's so much going on, or if that we feel that there's ever been a moment where we have ever been as unsure of the very institutions that we've always relied on for. In the past, I think that there's been a feeling that when one institution failed, there was a belief that the checks and balances or the systems that we had in place would catch us before there was a free fall, right? Collectively, maybe we hoped, we believed, and I know we organized around the principle that our democratic processes, that if whomever was in power now wasn't good, they could be replaced if unacceptable. That justice, while not always blind or speedy, would ultimately prevail, and that in America, although rife with flaws and terrible past injustices, we could ultimately perfect this union. That we could and would perfect this union. I mean, that is the point, right? That is the point. And now some of us, many of us, have that sinking feeling. Because for the first time, many of us, some have had this before, but some of us are just not so sure, because some of those institutions that we have relied on and looked to, are they there for us? Will they stop us from the free fall? We've been through some very difficult times as a country, right? I mean, I don't know if there's anybody here that would remember the difficult times, but I'm sure you talked to your parents or your grandparents about, what it felt like with Pearl Harbor. I remember my grandmother talking to me about her grandparents and what they went through, and my grandmother went through the Great Depression and different things, and we all remember 9/11, right? And how disorienting and devastating it was immediately following 9/11. However, if you think back, and I don't want to take us back to that too much, do you remember how united we were in our grief and our rage? It really was, despite being so scary, it was a unifying moment. And of course, what followed was much more complicated, right? But in the immediate aftermath, we felt a brotherhood that we hadn't felt in some time. So as a nation, we've endured wars and conflicts that have taken a toll on lives and shattered families. We've experienced scandal, racism, economic crises, injustices, pandemics. Yet always we've believed in the possibility and the promise of America and the institutions of government that would endure, because for every trauma we have endured, we have won battles against injustice. From the moment we stood against the actual king 248 years ago, to now, when we are being asked to stand against the delusional man who thinks he wants to be king, we have won. We have won voting rights and civil rights, gay marriage, Social Security, and the right to control our reproductive health. And we can all probably think of many more that we have won and many more that we need to win or we need to win back in order to perfect our union. And perfecting our union, that hope that we can do that, is in of itself resilience. But now, as we stand at this moment, our moment in history, when our democracy is not such a sure thing. And in fact, for some, it's not a thing to be cherished. For some, it's an antiquated belief system to be retired, or a danger to the top-heavy economic system. But for us, democracy is not merely a form of governance, but a testament to the power of collective voice and choice. It is through the democratic process that we uphold the values of equality, freedom, and representation. And we know democracy is not a given. It must be fought for and defended by each generation. And that is our time now to defend democracy. Yet we also know that democracy alone is not enough. It must be accompanied by justice, which is a commitment to fairness, equality, and the rule of law. Speaking of justice and the rule of law, I was thinking about, as you all saw, the passing of O.J. Simpson recently, and it got me thinking about how, if you remember during that time, some of the discussion around that trial, which of course everyone was riveted by watching, right? I remember the discussion was that new spin on the American justice system. And how would this turn out? Who would prevail? What would prevail with OJ? Would money buy justice, or would race counter what freedom money could buy? Well, we know how that turned out, however you think that went. But in the last several months, we have a new spin on it again. And we're hearing about the two justice systems in America, right? Because pundits are talking about the disparities in the justice system, and that the former president, why isn't he being treated like everybody else? And he should be. I mean, tomorrow we're going to start the hush money criminal trial again, so it's just going to be all the news all the time. But there's that little bit, there's that anger and that concern that, can he buy a level of treatment within the court system that you or I could never afford? And it is frustrating. And it's hard not to think about the countless people of little means who wither in jail waiting for a court date, and they have to wait because they can't make cash bail. But the former president, he can be accused of 88 felony charges and owe hundreds of millions in court fees and judgments, and still have a lovely Easter dinner at Mar-a-Lago with North Dakota's governor. It was a lovely day. However, as grumpy as that makes me feel, And I admit, you know what? I'm a Gen Xer and I am a mean girl, and that does make me grumpy. And I would like nothing more than to see him perp walked. I admit it. I want to see what he looks like in jail without his spray tan and his hair products. And I admit that is something I need to get my head around, because I pose to you that instead of asking, why doesn't the billionaire get treated in the same cruel and dehumanizing way as every poor kid in a hoodie with a dime bag of pot that happens to walk through a good neighborhood after dark? Maybe we should be asking, why isn't everyone treated like a billionaire former president when they enter the justice system? Isn't that the equity we're looking for? Let's be clear. If you're adjudicated guilty of a crime, there should be consequences. There absolutely should be. If you break the law, you need to, and found guilty, you need to be sentenced accordingly. But what if, just what if, instead of being frustrated that he isn't being treated poorly like so many have been, we get angry that everyone isn't treated with the same respect in the justice system that he is treated with? That is, after all, what is supposed to set us apart from the rest of the world. And it is a little bit of a change in how we're thinking about this, at least how I am. Everyone should be able to be afforded, not necessarily afford, but be afforded the same type of representation and be able to mount a vigorous defense, even if they tried to foment a coup. So from here on out, when people say, why isn't he treated like everyone else? I will ask, why isn't everyone treated like him? And that is going to be a shift in how I think about it. Let us hope and trust that justice will prevail, and that whatever happens in the many, many, many cases of the former president, that this will be an example not of the dark of our justice system, as we have seen, but of the light. That as a nation, we do adhere to the rule of law, and that our system of justice is built to protect us as much as it is to punish us. Let us advocate for justice as much as we are champions of democracy. And let us be beacons of resilience in our communities and beyond, because it's the collective efforts, those collective efforts, that's when freedom reigns and justice prevails and resilience abounds. And we can be kind and we can be resilient, but being resilient does not mean that we're forgetful. Because being resilient means that we can also fall prey to the cynical and the opportunistic. Be resilient, don't be forgetful. It's been absolutely astonishing to me that as we're gearing up for silly season, the elections, we keep hearing things like, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? I'm resilient, but I am not forgetful. Yes, 110%. Yes, we are better off than we were 4 years ago. I am paying more at the grocery store for my head of lettuce, and my bag of peanut M&Ms. Yes, and I do not like it. Yes, not entirely because of inflation, but also because of greed. First of all, that's just part of it. But yes, I do not like it. Nobody likes that. But I'll tell you what. You know what I remember about 4 years ago? I was this close to being put on a ventilator when I almost died of COVID. I didn't like carrying an oxygen tank around or having to have assistance getting up and down the stairs to my bedroom because I couldn't breathe. I didn't like that freezer trucks were being used in morgues in our cities, or that for that time North Dakota had the highest COVID death rate in the country. I didn't like that, and I remember that from 4 years ago. I didn't like that a man was murdered in the streets of Minneapolis by a police officer. I did not like that men with tiki torches were parading through an American college town yelling anti-Semitic slurs. And I certainly did not like dimwits, thousands of dimwits storming our Capitol and defecating, literally and figuratively, on our democracy. So yeah, I don't like paying more for my peaches, but we are better off in many, many ways than we were 4 years ago. So yes, I am resilient, but I am not forgetful. Democracy and justice are the principles that underpin our society, but I think in these days, we need to remember the profound significance of resilience. But the key to that, the key to all three, is engagement. Because when we engage with each other in meaningful ways, democracy and justice win. So I'm going to end with this. Here are my rules for engagement for a democratic and just community. Not all inclusive, but these are some. So, encouraging active engagement in the democratic processes, such as voting, community involvement, and advocacy, because it empowers individuals and it shapes communities. We need to encourage active engagement in democratic processes. We need to get out there. People get frustrated. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to be political. But we need to engage in community involvement. We need to push back against those that would tear down our democracy and instead focus and engage each other on strengthening our democratic institutions. Don't fall prey to these notions that every institution, because it has been run poorly intentionally to run it into the ground, Congress doesn't work, the post office doesn't work, healthcare doesn't, none of these things work. But was it done that way? Is it that way because government is all bad, or because people who hate government are running the government? Engage with each other about strengthening our democratic institutions, including free and fair elections that are easier to participate in, not more difficult. Easier to participate in, not more difficult. Engage with each other on the importance and critical need for a free and fair press and an independent judiciary that builds trust in the system and provides mechanisms for resolving conflicts. Speak up and speak out. We do have more in common with our neighbors and our friends and our family. We have more in common than we think. Sometimes we just have to change our approach and how we do it, which is why you should come on Wednesday nights to Let Us Talk. What is it called? Can We Talk? Can we talk? Because they talk about some of the ways in which we can approach each other. And here's one that we don't talk about a lot. Do not fall prey to those who demonize diversity, equity, and inclusion. I hear this so much. Promoting inclusivity and equity it's not a fad, and it's not the boogeyman. Oh, the boogeyman. It does not replace anyone to be equitable or inclusive. Prioritizing justice ensures that all members of society have equal access to rights, opportunities, and protections. It reduces disparities and fosters social cohesion. And it's absolutely crucial to a health and just society. Finally, we have to address underlying issues. We have to address underlying issues of poverty, racism, inequality, discrimination, political polarization, as well as focusing on justice and democracy, because that mitigates sources of social tension and conflict. So, resilience, along with democracy and justice, is not just about the ability to endure and face things head on, but it is about starting right now in this very room. Resiliency is nurtured through connection. It's about surrounding ourselves with a supportive network of family and friends and community who lift us up when we fall and remind us that we're not alone in our struggles. It's about reaching out for help when we need it and offering a helping hand to others in time of need. It's about finding a sustained purpose, finding meaning and significance in our lives, even when times seem as bleak as they do. It's about dedicating our time and our thoughts to something greater than ourselves. Friends, resilience will carry us through this storm, as it has many times before. So let us embrace it with the courage and strength, and sometimes a strong cup of coffee or even a gin and tonic. Within each of us lies the power to overcome, to endure and to thrive. But within each of us, more importantly, lies the ability to save our democracy.
As the rivers dry and the oceans warm, and lives are lost in the angry storms, far greater justice must be born to save us all. We are bending toward justice, and we're hungry now till it comes. We are bending toward justice, yes, and mercy for the daughters and sons. So show me the way to justice, elder to the child, and lead your youth to guide me. And what's more, dear child, how can I judge the righteous ways? I'm a poor excuse for a wise old sage. I need the help of your younger days, your strength, your soul. Said the child, see the world through my wondrous eyes. Loving shared is the greatest prize. Laugh their laughs and cry their cries. Then you'll know we are bending toward justice, and we're hungry now till it comes. We are bending toward justice, yes, and mercy for the daughters and sons.
Our closing words for extinguishing the chalice this morning come from an Australian author, Kate Forster. I think it's a deep consolation to know that spiders dream, that monkeys tease predators, that dolphins have accents, that lions can be scared silly by a lone mongoose, that otters hold hands. That's my favorite. And there was a picture when I got this. And that ants bury their dead. That there isn't their life and our life, nor your life and my life. That it's just one teetering and endless thread, and all of us are entangled with it as deep as entanglement goes.